Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay in the back? Yes, no? All right. So, my task today is to review some basic back protocols with you. We had Dr. Kesterson talk through kind of what those management and risk factors are, some of those things. So we've got a back chart that you guys are going to look at that looks an awful lot like this. That's what's coming your way. So, here's what I want to tell you a couple of things about. Number one is one thing I've learned in cow-calf production in Wyoming is everybody does it a little bit different. Every single one of you. You can be next door neighbors and it's still going to be a little bit different. And the reason it's a little bit different is we've got a lot of variation in how we manage, how we market, how timing of certain pasture movements, all kinds of things can affect how we vaccinate and when we vaccinate. So this is just kind of a baseline. Dr. Kevin and I went through it. You guys can recognize that we can adjust every segment of this to fit your specific operation. But I wanted to share with you what a basic one looks like. And we're going to go through this little thing, and we're going to work. If you look up here with me, we're going to take these calves and we're going to work across this as they get older. So obviously right here, calves, that's going to be birth. Does that make sense? And then branding, and then we'll get over here into pre-weaning, weaning, post-weaning, and then they're going to become a yearling heifer. It's going to be pre-breeding on a yearling heifer. And then it's going to be preg check on your heifer, and then she's going to become a cow. And that's how we're going to work through this. So, we're going to start with the calf. All right, we're going to start with calves. How many of you give a C and D or a 7-way at birth in calves? A couple of you do. What's really interesting is there's a whole bunch of research out there that says we can't figure out how much value we get out of vaccinating a baby calf at birth with a C and D or a 7-way. But anecdotally, I can tell you there is an awful lot of us that have had success and improvement in scours risk in calves when we do it. So, we darn sure if you've got some scour risk in calves, it is certainly something to put on your radar as a potential. Now, I put Enforce and I put this little asterisk by it. How many of you guys have used Enforce 3 over the last 10 years? Bunches of you.
Is that the nasal?
That's the intranasal. Yep, the intranasal comes in a little orange box. That little bugger, so that product has outperformed expectations of what we ever thought it would. How many of you have had children or grandchildren that have been hospitalized with RSV? That's what makes this thing magic is, guess what? RSV, BRSV in cattle, the younger the animal, the higher the risk. The older the animal, the lower the risk. Same thing in humans. We talk about 6-week to 6-month-old babies being in the hospital with RSV. You don't hear of 4-year-olds in the hospital with RSV, right? So, if you've got respiratory problems in calves, pre-branding, or even sometimes in summer pneumonia, and we'll talk a little bit about how this can help. But if you've got pre-branding or some high-risk summer pneumonia, there's an opportunity to put Enforce in those calves at birth to prime that immune system and get it started, because that BRSV is super high risk in those baby calves. Now, when we do that, if we move on to branding, and we come in with the Bovishield Gold 1 shot, and we've primed that immune system with an Enforce, we get to boost that with an injectable. And there's some research done in both human medicine and animal medicine, and it's called prime boost, where we prime with one delivery method of a vaccine, and we boost with a second one. And it's not just 1 + 1 = 2. We get a little extra kick out of it. Okay? So it's called prime boost. We can prime that calf with that baby calf age, boost even at branding with the Bovishield Gold 1 shot, and tremendously benefit that young calf. So if you've got some summer pneumonia problems, this is certainly something to look at. If you have some pre-branding respiratory risks, that's another time where we're going to want to look at Enforce there. Now, we've got Ultravax 7, we've got Dectomax injectable. We talked about the wormer risk, or the worm risk in cattle. Again, the younger the animal, the higher the risk. Dr. Kesterson showed that chart that had a little yellow, rise, and then it had a magenta one, and then this big spike orange one, and those were parasite loads in cattle. The younger that animal, the higher the risk they are to parasitism, and so there can be some tremendous weight gains with Dectomax. And then we talked about implanting Synovex C. He said 19 pounds. What's 19 pounds worth? Did anybody watch Superior Sale this week? Or last week? Oh man, there were some whoppers. There was some big dollars on calves.
Before you go away from that slide, are you suggesting all 4 of those protocols?
I'm saying those
or this
4.
one or the other?
Nope, each one.
All 4.
All 4.
There's
Respiratory disease protection, 7-way Clostridial protection, parasite management going to grass, implant for another few pounds. And each one of those things will be additive. All right?
So implants on the Synovex C, we do our steers, but we don't do our heifers. We found that one on our replacement heifers that we kept a couple of years that we did the Synovex C on our replacement heifers, we didn't have the fertility.
So that work has been done. University of Wyoming's done a whole bunch of it, going back to Doug Hickson, and there's some Shelby Rosasco, if you guys know her or met her, she's one of the beef extension specialists at Laramie. There's been a bunch of research on that, and they cannot find a way to prove that Synovex C now, age of calf is important. The limit on that implant is they need to be 45 days of age. Okay? Those calves
Why is that, Greg? What happens if they're less than that?
We have some potential reduction in female reproductive in efficiency, development. But if they're 45 days, and the research plays this out, if they're 45 days plus, there is no downside reproductively, and you're giving up 19 pounds of gain on your cull heifers. Okay? All right, pre-weaning. Yeah, I got 10 minutes to roll here. All right, pre-weaning. We're basically doing the same thing we talked about here, but there we've added this Valcor. Philip made a comment that we're starting to see resistance in parasite control products in the marketplace. There are basically 2 classes of parasite control products. You guys familiar with them? The avermectin class, which is Ivamax, Dectomax, Cydectin, Epernax. Those are all one class. And then the white wormers, Panacur, Safeguard, Valbazin. Okay? We are seeing resistance develop to those molecules. How do we know that? Because we can come in and combine the 2 and outperform either one of them individually. So it's pretty easy to measure. So he made a comment that combination is the key to resistance management, not rotation. If you want to rotate a drug and just stop using it for 20 years, that rotation would probably work. But using one drug 1 year and another molecule the next year and then back to the first one and then to the second one, that rotation plan doesn't work. Parasites that have overcome or developed that resistance to the molecule, that developed resistance just doesn't go away overnight.
Greg, what about 2 drugs, or let's say the same drug given 2 different ways at the same time? Any benefit to that?
No.
So Dectomax injectable, Dectomax pour on at the same time?
No. Dectomax injectable and Dectomax pour on at the same time has no long-standing. You're using the same molecule at the same time, so there's really no there's no benefit to that. Now, there's benefits to an injectable in certain times in management, and there's benefits to porons at certain times, but using half dose of each or a full dose of each isn't going to benefit you at all. Valcor has a third molecule for parasite control that hasn't been used in 40 years basically in the cattle business. Levamisole. Does anybody remember Tramadol or Levamisole from 20, 30, 40 years ago? If it was 20 years ago, it was only because somebody had one sitting in the vet shack from 20 years before that. So that's why I said you can overcome resistance with it without using a molecule for 20, 30, 40 years. And we have with Valcor. It's a combination of Dectamax and Levamisole. So combination will overcome resistance where rotation will not. Okay? We can boost those calves. So I put Valcor in both places because you're only going to use it in one of those two places. But it's kind of a pick and choose on how you're managing the cattle as to where you would use it. Okay? Post-weaning, especially on heifers, we want to develop the immune system in our heifers by getting that FP. Philip talked a little bit about that fetal protection. So where are we at on time? We got not much. All right, that is a fat heifer. All right, pre-breeding on heifers. Getting that second dose of the FP product in her. Booster bangs, if you guys are doing that. Some of you wanting to do some foot rot or multi-min prior to turnout. Now, time frame, this is pre-breeding, which is usually going to be kind of April, May, right? We can come back in. Now, this is the risk we talk about. There is some risk. If you're going to use a modified live at preg check while she's pregnant, she must have 2 doses pre-breeding, okay? So it can be post-weaning and then pre-breeding. That would be 2. But in order to do this, you have to do 2 of these pre-breeding, okay? Now, I threw Ultrabac 8 in here. Why did I throw Ultrabac 8? Does anybody know why we'd use an 8-way on the Grable River Basin? Redwater. Yep. So you guys get the luxury of having the only river bottom in the state of Wyoming that's confirmed liver flukes. Okay? Now, by the time that heifer gets out here to pre-breeding, so here she's, or pre-breeding here, sorry, preg check, now she's pre-calving. If you're doing scour guard, you need to get that second dose of scour guard in there. Or that first dose of scour guard, I'm sorry. Roughly 9 weeks pre-calving. That's got some flexibility, and those things can be worked out with your veterinarian. All right, cows. Pre-calving. So we just left, if we go back here, we left heifers. The last thing we did on these heifers was the first dose of scour guard. Now, we're into cows. We're going to get that second dose of scour guard, and you might want some lice control in those cows too, right? The next time we're going to touch her is out here at preg check time. Another dose of the fetal protection viral vaccine and Valbazin. Why do I say Valbazin? It's tied to that little guy right there. It's the only fluke control product that's very commonly used is the whitewormer Valbazin you can use to control flukes. Now, there's a bunch of limitations on what the product can do, and you need to recognize there's only 2 products that can kill flukes. They only kill adults. This is one of them. The other one is Chlorsulon, which is in Ivomec Plus. But those are the only 2 products you can do fluke control on. Work with Kevin or Dr. Philip or I if you want to talk about the best timing for managing adult flukes. Okay? Now, who vaccinates their bulls?
Who should vaccinate their bulls?
Anybody else want to raise your hand? It should be, everybody should have their hand up. Your bulls touch how many cows? Hopefully 25-ish, right? You just run them out there naked the whole time, or do we want to actually vaccinate them and get them protected? So I say that with a little jest, but the reality of it is, this little guy, now, timing, pre-breeding, guess what? You might want to make sure your bulls are good before they go out, right? Dr. Kesterson spent a bunch of time talking about the importance of breeding soundness exam on your bulls. I want to focus on the importance of getting a darn good fetal protection vaccine in them, get them cleaned up from a worm perspective and from a fluke protection, and that's all we really need to do to bulls. Test
All
them.
ages?
All ages. Yep. Okay, anybody here running some stalker cattle, some grass cattle? Okay, go to grass with Dectomax, boost them with a 5-way, and this brand new Synovex implant that's got a little bit of trenbolone acetate, a little bit of estrogen. It is a dandy new implant. So that goes through the whole chart you guys have, okay? It just worked its way across, down a line, moved across, down a line, moved across. You guys see that? This is guidelines in general. Scratch on it, we can adjust them how you want, we can print these things, we can laminate them, have them in vet shacks, whatever you want. They're certainly available to use. Write on them, review them with Kevin, with your veterinarian, work through them. They can be a wonderful reference tool for you. And we, like I said, we can customize them exactly how you want. So, all right, now, if you saw earlier, Dr. Kesterson had a slide up that talked about folds of honor. How many of you here are familiar with what folds of honor is? That's a pretty limited number of you. This is my son. He serves in the Wyoming Army National Guard on the weekends. And during the week, he does this. That is also my son. How many of you have heard that phrase, on behalf of the President of the United States of America and a grateful nation, and they hand that flag? Folds of Honor is a nonprofit organization that gives scholarships to families of fallen soldiers, wounded soldiers. The company I work for has taken a little bit of time and a whole bunch of money, and we donate to that organization based on the number of bottles of Draxxin and Exceed that are purchased. And it is millions of dollars. That number is severely short. Okay? We're approaching, by the end of this year, it'll be well over $2 million. I just want to say thank you for supporting us, for supporting our company, for supporting me, for supporting programs like this. Because it's important to all of us. We live in an amazing country. We work in an amazing environment. And it's just incredible. And I just want to say thank you, each and every one of you, for coming. Thank you for supporting us.